I stopped barking years ago because no one ever came. That sentence echoed in my mind the first time I met her. I didn't say it out loud, of course. Dogs can't talk, at least not in the way people do. But if you could hear the silence I carried, the one that wrapped around my little body like a threadbare blanket, maybe you would have heard it too. I used to bark once, loud, frantic, hopeful. I used to cry and scratch and throw myself against the metal bars of the cage, certain that someone would come for me. But after a while, the barking stopped. The hope drained out slowly, like rain dripping from a forgotten bowl. Years passed that way. The days blurred, the light changed, but nothing else did. No new smells, no new faces. Just the concrete floor, the rusting cage, and the slow whir of a broken fan that only worked sometimes. They called me Penny. Not that I ever heard it often. Only when food came. A bowl slid across the floor once a day, sometimes twice if the older man remembered. His name, I think, was Gary. I only know that because I once heard a woman call out, "Gary, you left the lights on again." Gary didn't talk to me. He didn't look at me either, not unless he was opening the cage door to throw in the food bowl or a stale piece of bread. He never touched me, never even tried. At first, I used to wag my tail when I heard footsteps. I would stand up, press my nose through the gaps in the metal, and wait. Sometimes I'd even let out a little chirp of excitement. That faded fast. No one came for me. Not ever. So I learned to wait in silence, to stay curled in the far corner of the cage, the spot that stayed dry even when it rained hard and the water leaked through the ceiling. I learned to sleep a lot. I dreamed more than I lived. The place was a shed, I think. On a farm, maybe. It smelled like old wood, mold, and mouse droppings. Sometimes I heard cows, or maybe goats, making noise in the distance. Sometimes the radio played country music for a few hours in the morning. But mostly, it was just quiet. The kind of quiet that presses on your chest. There was one small window. It was too high to see out of, but the light would move across the wall in a slow arc. That was how I kept track of time. If the light moved, the day was going. If it didn't, it was night. Or maybe the clouds were too thick. I was small when they put me in the cage. Just a puppy. My legs were too short to reach the food bowl without climbing. I remember that. I remember my mother's smell, too, but only faintly now. Like the echo of something beautiful that you can't quite recall. There was no blanket, no toys, no name tag. Just the cage, the bowl, and the sound of wind pushing against the tin walls. The first time the door opened and someone new stood there, I didn't even bother lifting my head. I thought it was Gary again, coming to drop off the usual bowl of dry food. But the steps were too quick, too soft. Then a voice, a woman's voice. "Oh my goodness! No, 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 no!" Her words spilled out like water breaking through a dam. There was something sharp in them, something wet. I blinked slowly and turned my head just enough to see her silhouette against the doorway. She smelled like lavender and something sweet. Honey, maybe. "Is this really her?" she asked, voice shaking. Someone behind her answered, but I couldn't hear the words. My ears weren't what they used to be. Too many years of silence. I didn't move. Not when the latch squeaked. Not when the cage door creaked open for the first time in who knows how long. Not even when the woman knelt and reached out a hand toward me. "Hey there, sweetheart," she whispered. That was new. No one had ever spoken to me like that. I lifted my eyes just enough to meet hers. They were blue, soft, shining. Her hand hovered inches away from my face. She didn't push, didn't try to grab me. "It's okay," she said. "I'm here now. You're safe." Safe. The word meant nothing to me, but her voice was warm, not loud, not angry. I didn't understand what was happening, but something inside me trembled. I tried to lift my head higher, but it wobbled. Too weak. She didn't gasp. She didn't flinch. She just moved a little closer and laid her hand flat on the floor. "You don't have to come to me," she said softly. "I'll come to you." That was the moment something broke open in my chest. Not pain, not fear. Something else. I don't know the word for it, but it made me want to crawl forward just a little. My front paws moved. My back legs followed slowly. I dragged myself toward her inch by inch. My nails clicked against the floor. When my nose touched her fingers, she didn't pull away. She smiled. "There you are," she whispered. "You beautiful little girl." I let her touch my cheek. Just once. Then I closed my eyes. I was so tired. The rest happened quickly. I felt arms wrap around me. Not tight. Careful. I didn't resist. I couldn't. My body went limp. She held me to her chest, and for the first time in my life, I felt a heartbeat that wasn't my own. It thudded against my ear like a song I hadn't heard before. She carried me outside. The light was too bright. I squinted, turned my head, pressed into her shirt. I heard voices. Someone said something about calling a vet. Another voice asked how long I'd been there. The woman didn't answer. She just held me closer. In the car, she wrapped me in a soft blanket. It smelled like home, even though I didn't know what that meant. She kept her hand on me the whole ride. We didn't go fast. I drifted in and out of sleep. I heard her hum once, a little tune that reminded me of wind chimes. At the vet, there were more lights, more hands, but everyone spoke in soft voices. They didn't poke too hard. They didn't yell. The vet, a tall woman with gray hair and a kind face, whispered to me the whole time. "You're a miracle," she said. I didn't know what that meant either, but I liked the sound of it. They said I was about 7 years old, too thin. My fur was patchy. My teeth were in bad shape. But my heart? It still worked. So did my lungs. My legs were weak but not broken. The vet looked at the woman who had found me and said, "She needs a lot of care and time, but she's got a chance." The woman nodded. "She's coming home with me." I didn't understand the words, but I felt the meaning in her touch. Her name was Lily. I learned that later. She lived in a house with a yellow door and flower pots on the porch. The air smelled like cinnamon and rain. She had a big backyard and a screen door that creaked when it opened. She had pictures of other dogs on her wall, all framed and smiling. She carried me inside and set me on a soft bed in the corner of the living room. A round cushion, warm and clean. She gave me a bowl of warm chicken broth. She didn't force me to eat. She just sat nearby, reading a book, her legs crossed under her. That first night, I didn't sleep much. I kept waking up, expecting the cage, the dark, the silence. But there was light from a little lamp, the sound of a clock ticking. and Lily breathing softly in the armchair. In the morning, she let me sniff the yard. My legs shook, but she held me steady. The grass was cool and wet. Birds chirped. A breeze moved the leaves in the trees. Everything smelled new. She spoke to me all the time. Not just commands, but stories. She told me about her childhood dog named Murphy, about the storm that knocked down the tree in her backyard, about her favorite pie recipe. I didn't understand the words, but I understood her voice. Days passed, then weeks. I started standing on my own, then walking. She clapped softly and whispered, "You're doing it, Penny." That name again. Penny. I liked it now. One day she held out a toy, a little stuffed bear with a squeaker inside. I stared at it, then I took it. My first toy. I carried it to my bed and rested my head on it. Lily smiled. "You're home now," she said. I didn't bark. Not yet. But my tail wagged, and deep down, for the first time, I believed it. The second time I barked, it startled both of us. It was just a little woof, a single dry sound that rasped out of my throat one morning when Lily came into the room holding something that smelled like bacon. She froze in the doorway, eyes wide, then slowly smiled. Her voice lifted like the breeze through leaves. "Was that you, Penny?" she whispered. I blinked. My tail gave a single thump against the cushion. I hadn't meant to bark. It just happened. It had been so long since the last time that the sound felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else. But Lily came and knelt beside me, gently cupping my face in her hands. Her eyes shone, but she didn't cry. "Good morning, beautiful girl," she said. "You want to eat with me in the kitchen?" And just like that, the day began. Each morning had its own quiet rhythm. Lily would shuffle around the kitchen while the coffee brewed. Her robe always smelled like rosemary and fabric softener. She spoke to me like I was a person, telling me what she was making, what the weather was doing, and how the neighbor's cat had knocked over her planter again. Sometimes she sang, softly, under her breath. Old songs from the radio. I would lie on the rug near the door, just close enough to watch her, just far enough to feel safe. I was learning the house now, where the sun landed first, where the creaky floorboard was in the hallway. The couch was off limits, but she never got mad when I stared at it. She would just pat the pillow beside her and say, "Almost, sweetheart. Someday soon." The backyard was my favorite place. The grass was patchy in some spots, and a little overgrown, but it was paradise. There were dandelions, bees that drifted lazily from flower to flower, and the occasional squirrel that darted up the oak tree near the back fence. Lily would sit on the steps with a book or a glass of tea, and I'd explore slowly, taking in every scent. I never wandered too far from her. The world was still too big, but I loved the breeze, the earth under my paws, and the way birds would swoop low like they were showing off. Some days it rained, and we stayed inside. Lily would light a candle and curl up with a blanket. She read a lot, but she always kept one hand free to stroke my back if I lay beside her. Her touch was never rushed, just quiet and steady. I didn't flinch anymore when she reached toward me. My body had stopped bracing for pain. She began brushing me in the afternoons. At first, the feeling was strange. I had never known grooming like that, but it didn't hurt. The brush was soft, her hand gentler still. Bits of my old fur fell away, revealing something new underneath, smoother, shinier. Lily would hum as she worked. "We're getting there," she'd murmur, little by little. We had visitors sometimes. The first time, I panicked. A man in a tan jacket stepped onto the porch, and my legs gave out beneath me. I crawled to the corner of the room and didn't move. My whole body trembled. Lily didn't force me to come out. She told the man to wait and brought him inside slowly. "It's okay," she said to both of us. "You don't have to be afraid." The man's name was Thomas. He had soft eyes and smelled like peppermint. He crouched down and kept his distance. He spoke to Lily more than to me. I watched him from under the table, trying to make sense of his presence. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't move too fast. After he left, Lily came over and sat beside me. She didn't say much, just rested her hand near mine. "He's my brother," she said softly. "He won't hurt you, but we can take our time." And we did. Every visit after that was the same, calm, slow. Thomas started bringing treats in his pocket. I didn't take them at first, but one day I inched forward, just enough to sniff. His hand stayed still. I took the treat. It was soft and meaty. I liked it. He smiled but didn't reach for me, just nodded. "You're a smart girl," he said. The next visit, I didn't hide under the table. Lily kept a journal. She wrote in it each night after dinner. Sometimes I watched her from my bed. She would glance up at me, smile, then go back to writing. I wondered what she wrote about. Maybe the way my tail moved a little more each day, or how I had finally let her bathe me without cowering. Baths were a new thing. Warm water. Bubbles that smelled like oatmeal and chamomile. At first I was afraid, but she spoke to me the whole time, kept one hand steady on my back. After the first few seconds, I just stood still and let it happen. The warmth felt good. The towel afterward was even better. She wrapped me up like a burrito and rocked me gently. "Clean as a whistle," she whispered. I didn't know what a whistle was, but I liked how proud she sounded. One afternoon, a truck pulled into the driveway. It made a deep rumbling noise that rattled the windows. I ran to the door but stopped short. A man got out, carrying boxes. He wore a hat and gloves. Lily opened the door and greeted him with a smile. "That's just the new fence," she said to me. Fence, I knew that word. Lily led me outside, keeping her hand on my leash. The man nodded at me but didn't try to touch. He walked to the back corner of the yard and started unpacking metal poles. Lily knelt beside me. "I want you to have more room to play," she said. I didn't know what that meant, but her tone was soft. So I sat beside her and watched. By evening, there was a new section of the yard closed in by a fresh fence. The gate latched with a quiet click. Lily unclipped my leash and opened the gate. I stepped inside slowly. The grass was tall. The breeze picked up. "Go on," she encouraged. I took a few steps, then more. I trotted. I stopped, turned, looked back at her. She nodded. "It's yours, Penny. All yours." I ran, not fast, not yet. My legs weren't strong enough, but I moved in circles, ears flopping, tail flying. I barked again, louder this time. The sound startled a bird from the tree, and I jumped back, then barked again. Lily laughed, full and warm. She clapped her hand and spun in a little circle on the patio. "Look at you go," she said. I ran until I couldn't anymore. I collapsed in the grass and rolled onto my side, panting. The sky above was wide and blue. Clouds moved lazily, like they had nowhere to be. Lily came and sat beside me, running her fingers through the fur behind my ears. "This is how it should have been," she said quietly. I pressed my nose to her hand. She didn't pull away. Later that night, I had a dream. Not of the cage, not of the dark, but of running, of grass and wind, and the sound of my own bark echoing back to me. Each day brought something new, a new sound, a new corner of the house to explore. I discovered the laundry room, where the floor was cool and the machines made a rhythmic hum. I found a patch of sun near the sliding door that was perfect for napping. Lily started teaching me things, simple commands. Sit. Stay. Come. I wanted to learn. I wanted to be good. Her praise was like sunshine. Every good girl made my chest feel lighter. She bought me a new collar, soft pink with a little bell. She held it up one morning and said, "Ready to be official?" She fastened it around my neck, careful not to tug. The bell jingled when I moved. I liked the sound. She took a picture of me and added it to the wall beside the others. Murphy, Daisy, Lulu, and now, Penny. She framed it herself, hung it above my bed. "Your family now," she said. I wagged my tail. One afternoon, she took me to the park. It was the first time I'd been in a car since the day she rescued me. I was nervous. The seat was soft, and she clipped me in gently, but the motion made my stomach twist. She spoke to me the whole drive. "It's just a short trip, nothing scary, I promise." We arrived at a park filled with trees, children, and other dogs. I froze when I saw them. Big dogs, small dogs, loud dogs. Their barks echoed in my ears. My legs locked. Lily saw. She knelt beside me and whispered, "Just a walk. You don't have to meet anyone today." We stayed on the outer path, away from the crowd. I sniffed the trees, the benches, the grass. Everything was new. I saw ducks in a pond. A boy waved at me. I stayed close to Lily's side the entire time. She didn't push. When I looked up at her, she smiled. "Next time, maybe we say hello to someone," she said, "but only if you want to." When we got home, she gave me a treat and brushed my ears. I slept deeply that night. No dreams, just peace. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lily sat on the porch with a photo album. I rested my chin on her knee. She turned the pages slowly. "These were my parents," she said. "And this was my first dog. We found him under a porch." I watched her face, though there was a softness there. Not sadness, something else. "He changed my life," she whispered. She turned another page. "And now, it's you." The sky turned dark. Fireflies began to glow in the yard. Lily closed the book and leaned back in her chair. "We're just getting started, you and me," she said. I believed her. Word count, 4,980. The first time I played with another dog, I didn't know what to do. His name was Max, a golden retriever who lived across the street. He was big, bouncy, and full of energy that startled me at first. His bark wasn't mean, just loud. When Lily opened the front door and waved to his owner, Max galloped over like he'd been waiting his whole life for that exact moment. I took a step back, then another. My ears folded, and I tucked my tail tight under my belly. but Lily crouched next to me and whispered something low. "You're safe. He just wants to say hi." Max sniffed the air around me, circling once, then lay down, belly flat to the ground, tongue lolling from his mouth like he was smiling. His tail swept the porch in steady thumps. I looked at Lily. She nodded. So I crept closer. Our noses touched for a second. Then I darted behind her leg. Max stayed still, letting me decide. That was good. I didn't like surprises. After a few more minutes, I stepped out again. This time, when I touched noses, I lingered. He gave a small bark, then jumped up and took off toward the yard. He stopped and looked back, tail wagging. I hesitated. Lily smiled. "Go on, just a little run." I followed. We didn't play in the way he was used to. I didn't chase or wrestle, but I ran alongside him, darting left when he darted right, circling back when he looped around the tree. I barked once, then again. It came out faster, clearer than the times before. Joy, not alarm. Something inside me clicked. When Max left, I was tired but happy. I collapsed onto the rug inside, paws twitching from the leftover excitement. Lily brought me water, then sat next to me. "You made a friend today," she said. And I had. The weeks passed. I learned more words. I could tell the difference between walk and bath, between dinner and treat. Lily's voice was my guide. Her footsteps were steady, her hand always gentle. I knew the sound of her laugh and the way she sighed when she was tired. I followed her around the house, always at a respectful distance, always watching. Not because I was scared anymore, just because I liked being near her. One afternoon, we sat in the backyard, and Lily brought out a new toy, a ball. She rolled it gently toward me. "Want to try?" I pawed at it, then nudged it with my nose. It rolled a few feet away, and I chased it down. The game was simple, but I liked it. She clapped when I brought it back near her. "You're getting the hang of this," she said. The next time, I picked it up with my teeth and carried it to her lap. Her eyes filled with something warm. "That's my girl." I dropped the ball and rested my head against her leg. Her hand found my ear. Rain came the next day, soft and steady. I stayed by the window, watching the drops trail down the glass. Lily baked something that made the whole house smell like apples. She set a small plate on the floor near me. A slice of apple, peeled and thin. I sniffed it, then took a bite. Sweet, crisp. I looked up at her. "Just a treat," she said. Even the small moments were full of something I had never known before. Love. That's the word I heard her use when she spoke on the phone. "She's doing so well," Lily said. "Every day is a little brighter. I think she's finally starting to trust that this is real, that she's home." The person on the other end asked something, and Lily laughed. "No, not adopted yet. I haven't made it official. I just want to make sure it's what she wants too." That night, she sat beside me with a small folder. Inside was a form. I didn't know what it meant, but her eyes were soft as she looked at it. "I know we're still learning each other," she said. "But if you want to stay, I'd like to make it permanent." I licked her hand. She filled out the form the next day. From then on, everything felt a little more ours. My bed moved a little closer to hers. She added another tag to my collar. It was heart-shaped and red, with my name and her phone number engraved on it. She held it in her hand for a moment before attaching it. "Now, if you ever get lost," she whispered, "someone can always bring you back." I never planned on getting lost. Summer rolled in, slow and golden. The days stretched long, the sun warm on the porch. Lily set up a small kiddie pool in the backyard. At first, I wasn't sure about it. The water was shallow, but strange. I circled it, sniffed, pawed at the edge. Lily stepped in, her pants rolled up, laughing. "Come on, Penny, it's just water." I dipped a paw, then another. Then I was standing in the cool water, watching the ripples move. She splashed a little, not too much, just enough to show it was fun. I wagged my tail. We stayed like that until the sun dipped behind the trees. Lily dried me off with a towel, humming as she worked. Then we sat on the porch and watched the sky turn orange and pink. She told me stories as we watched the stars come out. Stories about when she was a girl, about a swing set her father built, about a lightning storm that knocked out the power one year, and how they played board games by candlelight. "You would have liked it," she said. "You would have curled up under the table and barked every time the thunder rolled." She laughed. The days were peaceful. We had a rhythm now. Morning walks, breakfast, naps. Lily started volunteering at a local shelter a few days a week, and sometimes she took me with her. At first, I stayed close to her legs, nervous around all the barking, all the smells. But the other dogs were kind. Most were scared, too. Lily introduced me to a puppy named Rosie. Just 3 months old, all floppy ears and uncoordinated feet. She yipped and tumbled and licked everyone. I didn't know what to make of her. But she followed me around the yard, copying my every move. When I lay down, she lay beside me. When I got up, she did too. Lily watched with a smile. "Look at you. You're teaching her already." We visited Rosie often. One day, a family came to adopt her. They had kids who laughed loudly and ran fast. Rosie barked and jumped and licked their faces. The kids squealed with joy. Lily knelt beside me as we watched. "It's good," she said. "They'll love her." I missed Rosie after that. For a few days, I waited by the door, listening for her high-pitched bark. But Lily brought me a new toy, a stuffed fox, and we played together on the rug until the ache faded. One morning, Lily seemed tired. She sat longer than usual at the table, her coffee untouched. I lay near her feet, watching. "Just a headache," she said, rubbing her temple. "I'll be okay." She took a nap that afternoon. I stayed beside her, ears tuned to every sound. She woke with a cough and a weak smile. "Don't worry, Penny. I'm fine." But the next day, she went to the doctor. Thomas came over to stay with me. I didn't bark or hide. He brought treats, and we sat in the living room while he watched a game on TV. I lay beside him, still and alert. Lily came home with a small bag of medicine and a weary smile. "Just a little bug," she said. She got better, but I stayed close. I watched everything now, every movement, every sigh. She noticed. "You're my little shadow," she whispered one evening. "You always know." Fall came, and the leaves turned. The yard filled with golden piles that Lily raked into neat mounds. I jumped into one once just to see. Leaves scattered everywhere. She laughed until she cried. We took longer walks now. The air was cooler. I wore a small sweater Lily knitted herself. It was blue with a little patch shaped like a bone. She took pictures, showed them to her friends. Everyone said I looked cozy. We visited the shelter again, and Lily introduced me to a dog named Charlie. He had been through something too. Scars on his back, a limp in his step. He didn't bark, but we sniffed each other and sat side by side for a while. Afterward, Lily whispered, "Not all scars are visible." I understood. One evening, as we watched the sky darken, Lily reached into her pocket and pulled out a keychain. It had a charm on it shaped like a paw. "Got this from the shelter fundraiser," she said. "Thought it looked like you." She held it next to my tag. Same color, same shine. "Meant to be," she said. I licked her fingers. That night we stayed up late. She lit a fire in the fireplace and we sat together on the rug. I rested my head in her lap. She stroked my back in slow circles. "When I found you," she said, "I thought I was saving you. But really, you saved me too." I closed my eyes. Her voice was the last thing I heard before sleep took me. We weren't finished yet. There were still more walks to take, more toys to discover, more mornings to wake up to the sound of her voice saying, "Good girl." And I would be. Always. Winter came slowly, like a hush falling over the town. The first snow didn't arrive until December, but when it did, it turned the yard into something magical. I woke up that morning to Lily pulling back the curtains, her breath catching softly. "Well, would you look at that?" she said. Outside, the grass had disappeared under a blanket of white. The trees wore a dusting on their branches, and the wooden fence was traced with frosty lines. I pressed my nose to the glass, fogging it up with my breath. It looked soft out there. Cold, but soft. Lily bundled herself up in her thick coat and boots, then slipped on my own sweater, a thicker one this time, with tiny white patterns that matched the snow outside. She opened the back door slowly, letting the cold rush in. "Want to see what it feels like?" she asked. I hesitated at the threshold, paw hovering above the step. Then I lowered it. The snow gave slightly under my weight, crunching faintly. I sniffed. Cold, sharp, and clean. I took another step, then a third. The yard looked the same, but everything felt different. Quieter, softer. Even the squirrels were gone, their chatter replaced by silence. I didn't run, I just walked slowly through the white, leaving a trail of paw prints behind me. Lily followed, taking pictures with her phone. She laughed when I paused to lick the snow, shivering from the cold. We didn't stay out long. She called me back when the wind picked up, and I trotted toward her, paws wet, tail wagging. Inside, she wrapped me in a towel and dried me off, then placed a small, heated blanket in my bed. I curled up and listened to the wind tapping softly against the windows. Later that day, we sat together on the couch, sipping warm drinks. "Well," she sipped, "I had a special bowl of warm broth that she made just for me." She lit a candle that smelled like cinnamon and pine. The scent filled the room. "You don't seem too sure about the snow," she said, rubbing behind my ears. "It'll grow on you." I didn't mind the snow. It reminded me of something I couldn't quite place. Maybe the cool silence of the shed. But this was different. This wasn't lonely. This was safe. Over the next few weeks, the snow kept coming. We made short trips to the park, where the frozen pond glittered like glass. I got used to walking on shoveled paths, my paws wrapped in little booties that took some getting used to. Lily would laugh as I kicked and flailed the first time she put them on. "You look like a show pony," she said. I didn't know what a show pony was, but I knew her laughter, and it made my tail wag. One day, she brought home a small tree and set it up in the corner of the living room. She decorated it with lights and ornaments that shimmered when the firelight touched them. A little stocking with my name on it hung beside hers. "You're part of the holiday now," she said. The house filled with visitors as Christmas approached. At first, the extra voices made me nervous. I would retreat to the bedroom or curl beneath the table, but Lily always checked on me, giving me a soft smile or a reassuring scratch behind the ears. Thomas came by often, and I had grown used to his smell, his calm presence. He brought me a toy on Christmas Eve, a little rope shaped like a candy cane. He didn't try to play with it, just handed it to Lily and nodded in my direction. "Merry Christmas, Penny," he said. On Christmas morning, Lily let me open my own gift. She had wrapped it in soft paper and tied it with a ribbon. I sniffed, nudged, then tore into it with my teeth. Inside was a plush duck that squeaked when I bit it. I ran laps around the coffee table, duck in my mouth, tail flying. Lily laughed and clapped. "That's a hit!" We spent the rest of the day listening to music, eating small treats, and watching snow fall outside. The world felt distant, muffled by the cold, wrapped in warmth and light. I lay with my head in Lily's lap as she stroked my back. "I don't know how I ever lived without you," she whispered. I didn't have an answer, but I felt the same. January brought long nights and quiet mornings. We fell into a slow rhythm like a song played softly over and over. Lily started working from home more often. She would sit at her desk by the window, typing away, and I would lie at her feet, half asleep, but always listening. Sometimes she would pause and reach down to rub my head. "Still there?" she'd ask. Always. We had a scare one night. A loud crack outside, followed by the sound of something heavy crashing to the ground. Lily jumped up and ran to the window. "Tree branch," she said. "Too much snow." I didn't understand what that meant, but her voice was steady. She checked the back door, walked around the house, then came back in and locked everything. I stayed close to her side. Even after she settled back into bed, I didn't return to my cushion. I lay beside her bed, ears perked. She didn't tell me to move. The next day, we walked out and saw the damage. A thick limb from the old oak had snapped and fallen across the fence. It crushed part of it, splitting the wood and leaving a gap. Lily sighed. "Guess we'll be fixing that this week." I sniffed the broken wood, then looked back at her. "It's okay, Penny. We'll take care of it." She always said we now, not I, not you. We. As the days stretched toward spring, the snow began to melt. Little by little, the grass returned. Patches of earth showed through the white. The air smelled different, less cold, more alive. Birds came back. I could hear them early in the mornings. Lily started planting again. She bought seeds in little pots, spreading soil across the kitchen table. I watched her work, tilting my head at the strange smells and textures. She caught me eyeing the potting soil and laughed. "Not for eating," she said. One day, she let me help dig in the garden. Well, she dug and I supervised. But she let me sniff each flower before placing it in the dirt. I liked the marigolds best. With the return of warmer days came more trips to the park. The trees had new buds, and the paths were damp with melted snow. Max returned from a long winter break with his family and bounded across the street to greet me. This time, I didn't hesitate. I barked once and ran to meet him. We played until the sun dipped low. Lily watched from the porch, arms folded, smiling. She looked tired, though. Her eyes lingered on the horizon longer than usual. When she came back inside, she sat on the couch and rubbed her temples. I jumped onto the cushion beside her, something she now allowed without question. I rested my head on her leg, waiting. She ran her fingers through my fur. "I have a checkup next week," she said quietly. "Just routine." I didn't know what that meant, but I stayed close. The day of her appointment, Thomas came to watch me. He arrived with a bag of treats and a new toy, a stuffed rabbit. I greeted him at the door, tail wagging. "Look at you," he said. "Whole different dog from when we first met." We sat on the porch while Lily was gone. The breeze carried the scent of fresh earth and distant rain. I stared at the driveway until I saw her car return. She smiled when she stepped out, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Later that evening, as she sat brushing my fur, she whispered, "Everything's okay, just tired." I leaned into her hand. Spring unfolded slowly. Trees bloomed. The backyard turned green again. Lily hung a wind chime on the porch that sang whenever the breeze rolled in. I liked the sound. It reminded me of the first day she brought me home. She began walking slower, though, stopping more often, sitting down sooner. I noticed. I stayed even closer. "Getting old, I guess," she said one day with a laugh. "Or maybe you're just rubbing off on me." But her hands still moved with care. Her voice still held warmth. And each night, before she turned off the light, she still whispered, "Good girl." That was all I needed. Lily started sitting down more often than before. Not just when she was reading or writing in her journal, but in the middle of walks or while folding laundry. She would pause, hand on her chest or her hip, and take a long breath. Then she'd smile at me and say something like, "Must be the heat today, huh?" I watched. Always. Not in a nervous way anymore, but out of habit. She was my whole world. Her footsteps, the scent of her shampoo, the sound of her keys jingling in the hallway. I knew them all. I could tell when something wasn't quite right, even if she tried to hide it with soft words and practiced smiles. One afternoon, after a longer walk than usual, she sat heavily on the porch steps and leaned her head back against the post. "Whew," she said. "I used to be able to do 3 miles without even blinking." I sat beside her, nudging her hand with my nose. She gave me a weak grin and ran her fingers along my ear. "Guess we all slow down eventually, huh?" The days grew warmer, the air thick with the smell of blooming trees and fresh grass. I spent more time lying in the shade near the garden while Lily tended to her plants. She didn't dig as deep now or carry the heavy watering cans. Sometimes she just sat on her little stool using a trowel to pat the soil around her marigolds. She started getting help from Thomas more often. He came by with a toolbox one Saturday and fixed the part of the fence that had never quite recovered from the winter storm. I watched from the back steps as he hammered and sawed. Lily brought him lemonade and stood with her hands on her hips, squinting at the work. "Looks good," she said. Thomas gave her a sideways glance. "You sure you're okay?" She waved him off, but her voice was quieter. "I'm just tired lately. Doctor says I need to rest more. You know me. I'm not great at sitting still." Thomas didn't argue, just nodded and went back to his work. That evening, after he left, Lily and I sat on the porch together. The wind was warm, carrying the scent of cut grass and blooming lilacs. She reached down and scratched the back of my neck. "You're the only one who doesn't ask questions," she murmured. I licked her hand. She started taking naps during the day, sometimes on the couch, sometimes in the sunroom, where the light spilled across the floor in golden sheets. I would curl up nearby, never far, She had moved a second bed into that room for me, one with a quilted blanket that matched her favorite throw. When she slept, I listened to her breathing. I counted the rises and falls of her chest, the soft whistle of her nose. I learned to recognize the difference between deep sleep and shallow rest. She woke once from a nap, blinking at me like she didn't quite recognize where she was. "Still here?" she asked softly. Always. She had another appointment the following week. She didn't tell Thomas, just got up early, put on a clean shirt, and brushed her hair a little more carefully than usual. I watched her in the mirror. "It's nothing," she told me, her voice light. "Just some tests. Probably low iron or something. They always say that." When she returned, her hands were trembling. Just a little. Enough for me to notice. She sat on the floor instead of the couch and pulled me close, wrapping her arms around me. "I'm fine," she whispered. "I am, just tired of being tired." She rested her cheek on my head and didn't move for a long time. The next morning, I woke to find her in the kitchen, staring out the window with a faraway look. She didn't start the coffee. She didn't hum. I walked up and nudged her leg gently. She blinked, then looked down at me. "I guess I should call Thomas," she said. He came by that afternoon. I could hear their voices from the porch. Quiet, serious. She handed him a folder and pointed to the table. He opened it, read for a while, then let out a long breath. "What do you need from me?" he asked. Lily didn't answer right away. "Just be here sometimes, that's all." That night, Lily didn't eat dinner. She curled up on the couch and pulled the blanket over her lap. I climbed up beside her without waiting for an invitation. She didn't move me. She started taking pills in the morning. I watched her line them up on the counter, her hands careful, deliberate. Red ones, white ones. A blue capsule that rolled across the table once. She caught it and smiled faintly. "Still got it," she said. She kept her sense of humor. That didn't change. Even on the days she was too tired to go outside, she would wave at the birds from the window and say something silly about their chirping. "They're gossiping again," she told me. Probably about how I never sweep the porch. But her voice was softer now, her footsteps slower. I adjusted to her new pace. I walked beside her, pausing when she paused. I waited outside the bathroom door, lay under the table while she rested. I stayed alert to every sound. Then came the hospital visit. It wasn't planned. One evening, she sat up suddenly, clutching her ribs, her breath short. Thomas was there within minutes. I barked when the paramedics came through the door. One of them tried to calm me with a gentle hand. Lily raised her arm and pointed. "Let her come. She won't leave." They let me ride in the front of the ambulance. I sat perfectly still, staring at the back where Lily lay, her face pale, her eyes fluttering. At the hospital, they wouldn't let me go further. A nurse knelt beside me and stroked my back. "We'll take care of her," she promised. Thomas arrived soon after. He picked me up gently and carried me outside. We drove home in silence. For 2 nights, she didn't come back. I paced the house. I sniffed her clothes, lay in her bed, stared at the door. Thomas stayed with me, sleeping on the couch, trying to coax me into eating. On the 3rd morning, the front door opened. Lily walked in slowly, a band on her wrist and new shadows under her eyes. But she was smiling. "Hey you," she said. I ran to her, whining, tail wagging so hard it thumped against the wall. She dropped to her knees and held me close, I missed you, she whispered. So much. She stayed in bed most of that week. I barely left her side. I only went out when Thomas opened the door and coaxed me gently. But I returned quickly, every time, just to make sure she was still there. One evening, as she lay stroking my paw, she said, "You know, if I had found you just a few days later, I might have missed my chance." She didn't explain what that meant, but I knew the look in her eyes, gratitude, and something else, determination. She started writing more often, filling pages in her journal, typing on her laptop. She made video calls to friends and laughed when they showed her their new puppies. She called the shelter to check on Charlie, the dog with the limp. "He got adopted," she said to me, grinning. "A retired couple. Quiet house, big yard. Perfect." The way her voice sounded that day stayed with me. Clear, bright. I barked. She looked up, surprised, then laughed. "Are you celebrating too?" I wagged. She painted a picture of me one afternoon. Just a small canvas. Nothing fancy. But she took her time with every brushstroke, tilting her head, smiling softly. "You've got a good face for art," she said. She hung it beside the bookshelf, next to the picture of Murphy. Life went on. Quiet, gentle, real. Lily began teaching me new words. Not commands, not like sit or stay, but names. She would say the word and point, then say it again. Slowly, clearly. She did it every day, repeating it like a soft chant, a game only the two of us played. "This is Lamp," she said, pointing to the tall wooden one in the corner. "Sofa," she added, patting the seat where I curled beside her. "Window," she whispered, as we both stared outside at the afternoon light dancing through the trees. I didn't understand every word, not really. But I watched her face, her hands, the way her voice changed. The lamp was bright, the sofa was warm, the window was open to the world. That's what she meant. And I understood what she meant. She would smile when I touched the right object with my nose or lifted my eyes toward whatever she named. "You're so smart," she said, cupping my face in her hands. And even though I didn't know how to say it back, I hoped she could see it in my eyes, that I thought the same of her. The garden bloomed in full that spring. Marigolds, lavender, snapdragons. Lily planted a small patch of herbs near the back steps, basil, rosemary, mint. She rubbed the leaves between her fingers and held them up to my nose. "This one smells like summer, doesn't it?" I wagged. We started eating outside more often. She set up a small table on the porch, where she sipped tea and nibbled on toast, and I sat at her feet with my own bowl of cooled broth or a few slices of apple. Birds came and went, building nests in the eaves. A robin nested near the gutter, and Lily named her Maggie. We watched her dart back and forth, bringing twigs and worms, singing in the mornings. "She works hard," Lily said, adjusting her scarf around her shoulders. I thought Lily did too. Sometimes we took short trips again, just around the block, down to the lake with the wide walking trail and the benches that looked out over the water. I liked those walks. She moved slowly, and I matched her pace. We would stop often, sit quietly, and just watch the wind move across the surface. People passed us and smiled. "She's a good girl," they'd say. Lily always answered, "The best." She began talking to me more about the past, not just stories about Murphy, but her childhood, her parents, a cabin she once stayed at in the mountains where snow piled up against the windows and coyotes howled at night. "You would have been scared," she said once, petting the side of my face, "but I'd have kept you warm." I didn't think I would have been scared, not if she were there. One afternoon, she took out an old scrapbook. It was worn at the corners, the pages thick with pictures and clippings. She spread it out on the rug beside me and flipped through it slowly. "This was my mom's handwriting," she said, running her fingers along the edge of a recipe card. "She used to write everything in pencil. Said ink was too permanent for a woman who changed her mind a lot." She smiled at that, and I liked the sound of her voice when she told those kinds of stories. Later, she turned the page and showed me a photo of herself, much younger, standing behind a golden retriever. "Murphy," she said, tapping the picture. "He liked to steal socks. I never trained him out of it." She paused, looking at the photo a long time. "You know," she said, "he helped me through college. I was so lonely then. He was the only one who listened, really listened." I rested my paw on her knee. She looked at me and smiled. "Now I have you." The days warmed. The sun stayed up longer. I watched the garden shift colors every week as different flowers took their turn. I liked lying in the grass beside the lavender. The bees didn't scare me anymore. One morning, Lily brought out a blanket and spread it on the lawn. She had a book, a glass of lemonade, and a bowl of strawberries. "Picnic," she said, patting the blanket. I stepped onto the cloth and lay beside her. She fed me a slice of strawberry, and I licked the juice from her fingers. She giggled. "This is nice," she said. "We should do this more." She fell asleep in the sun for a little while, and I kept watch. The breeze ruffled her hair, and a leaf drifted down onto her arm. I gently nuzzled it off. When she woke, she looked at me for a long time. "I think you've been more than just a dog," she said. "You've been my memory keeper, my secret holder, my reason to keep getting up in the morning." I leaned my head against her chest and closed my eyes. On another day, she pulled out an old camcorder, not the kind people use now with little screens and touch buttons, but one with a strap and a viewfinder. "Let's make a movie," she said, pointing it at me. She filmed us walking in the yard, sitting on the porch, playing with the squeaky duck that had long since lost its squeak. She narrated in a soft, playful voice. "And here is Miss Penny, the bravest, kindest pup this side of the Mississippi," she said. I barked once and she laughed. She edited the footage later that week and played it on the television one evening. We sat on the couch together, watching our little story unfold. When it ended, she whispered, "That's a good life." Another letter arrived from the shelter a few days later. They asked if Lily wanted to volunteer again over the summer. She read it aloud, then glanced at me. "Think you'd like to visit again? Say hello to the new pups?" I barked softly. We drove there on a Tuesday morning. The shelter looked the same smells, the same painted walls, the same rows of kennels. But this time I didn't hide. I walked beside her, leash loose, tail gently swaying. She introduced me to a new litter of puppies. Wiggly, squeaky, round-bellied. I watched them bounce around and sniff everything in sight. One of them, a little brown pup with droopy ears, climbed onto my back and nibbled at my collar. I turned and looked at him, then lay down. The others followed. Soon, I was covered in warm, clumsy bodies, and Lily was laughing so hard she had to sit down. "You're a regular grandma," she said. We stayed for an hour, helping the staff clean and play and feed. Then Lily filled out a form and left a small donation. In Penny's name, she told the front desk volunteer. We drove home with the windows down, the breeze soft against my face. She played music and sang along to a song I'd heard before. When we got back, she sat on the porch steps, resting her chin in her hand. I'm tired today, she admitted. I leaned against her. She didn't say anything more. That night, we curled up together on the couch. She pulled the blanket up to her chin, her hand resting on my back. You remember that storm we watched the first week you were here? She asked. I lifted my head. I was so scared you wouldn't make it, that I'd lose you before you ever got to feel what love was like. I licked her cheek. But you stayed. You lived. You became mine. The wind outside picked up. Trees whispered against the windows. She closed her eyes. And now I'm yours. Lily began writing more letters. She used her favorite pen, the one with the tiny gold flecks in the barrel, and a stack of note cards with pressed flowers printed along the edges. I watched from my bed in the sunroom as she wrote, her posture tilted, her lips pressed gently together in thought. Sometimes she read them out loud. Dear Sarah, she began one afternoon, her voice steady. I wanted to thank you for that pie recipe. Penny and I made a mess of the kitchen trying to follow it, but the smell alone was worth it. She paused, smiled to herself, then kept writing. Other times, the letters were quieter, meant for people I didn't know and voices I had never heard. Names like Joan and Clarissa and Elaine. Her voice trembled on those days, not out of sadness, but something deeper. I lay beside her and rested my head on her feet, grounding her in my own way. Lily never explained what the letters were for. She just folded them into envelopes and placed them in a basket on the hallway table. The basket grew full quickly. Spring rolled into early summer. The sun grew hotter, but the mornings still held a coolness that we both enjoyed. We returned to our picnic blanket on the lawn, and sometimes we lay there for hours. I would doze and she would read. The smell of clover and warm soil wrapped around us like a blanket. Lily had started a small photo album too, just for me. Pictures she had taken since the day she brought me home. The first one was of me curled in the corner of the shed, my eyes wide, my body thin and folded in on itself. That one she kept in the very back. We don't need to look at it, she said the first time she showed me, but I keep it to remember how far we've come. The rest of the photos were warm and colorful. Me running in the snow, me sleeping in the garden, me peeking out from under the quilt with only my nose visible. She laughed softly as she flipped through them. You've got quite the modeling portfolio, Miss Penny. We visited the shelter again that month. This time, Lily didn't stay long. She greeted the staff, handed over a bag of donated supplies, then leaned on the desk while talking to the director. Her face was pale, and I stayed close to her leg, pressing gently against her calf. After a few minutes, we left. She didn't explain why, but the next day, she spent most of the afternoon in bed. Thomas came by with groceries. He helped Lily to the kitchen table and unpacked everything. I watched from the hallway as they talked in hushed voices. I don't want to scare her, Lily said. She knows, Thomas replied. Even if she doesn't understand the words, she knows. I returned to my spot beside the couch as they finished. When Thomas left, he knelt beside me and patted my shoulder. Take care of her, he said softly. I always did. Later that week, Lily brought out a small wooden box and set it on the kitchen table. It was old, with a delicate brass latch and faded corners. She opened it slowly, revealing scraps of fabric, old movie stubs, photographs faded at the edges. "This was my mom's," she said. "She kept memories here, little bits of her life." She laid out the items one by one. A ring from a bubblegum machine, a handkerchief with her mother's initials, a small drawing in crayon from a child's hand. She added a photo of us to the collection. One of me sitting at her feet on the porch, the wind gently tugging at her hair. "This belongs in here now," she whispered. Lily began organizing the house differently, not in a frantic way, but with quiet purpose. Closets were sorted, drawers emptied, shelves dusted. She gave away books she said she no longer needed. She set aside a stack of things in a box labeled Thomas. I followed her from room to room, watching her hands move with calm care. She paused one day in front of a shelf and stared at a ceramic figurine, a golden retriever, old and chipped. "Murphy," she said, gently brushing off the dust. "I forgot this was here." She didn't put it in any box, just carried it back to the living room and placed it beside my photo. "Now you both keep me company," she said. That night, we sat on the porch under a sky full of stars. Lily had brought out 2 pillows and a blanket. I lay close, my head resting in her lap. "When I was a little girl," she said, "I used to believe stars were holes punched in the sky to let heaven peek through." She laughed quietly. "Funny, right?" I listened. I always listened. I wonder if anyone is looking down now. If my mom sees us. If Murphy does. If they know I'm okay. I nuzzled closer. She stroked my back. "I think they do," she whispered. The garden bloomed again and again. Lily added more herbs. She picked tomatoes from the vine and sliced them over toast. She let me taste a tiny piece once. "Not bad," she said, watching my reaction. We spent long afternoons in the sunroom, the windows wide open, the air full of the hum of bees and distant lawnmowers. Lily read out loud now. Old books, poems, letters she had written but never sent. One afternoon she said, "If you were a person, Penny, I think you'd be a writer. You pay attention. You're quiet, but you never miss anything." I blinked at her, and she smiled. "Maybe I should write your story." She began that evening. She sat at her desk with her old laptop, the keys worn smooth, the screen flickering faintly. She typed for hours. I lay nearby, listening to the tap of each letter. "She was small and silent when I found her," she read aloud. "But something in her eyes said, 'I am still here.'" She didn't stop writing for days. She skipped meals, slept less. She kept talking to me while she typed. "Do you remember that storm? How you curled up in the corner and wouldn't come out until I sang to you? Remember the time we burned the toast and had to open all the windows? Remember Rosie, the puppy with the hiccups?" I remembered. She wrote and wrote until the stack of pages beside her grew thick. When she finished, she printed a copy and placed it in a folder with a hand-drawn title, Penny's Story. She placed it on the shelf beside the photo album. "Now it's part of the house," she said. One night, a thunderstorm rolled in. I had learned not to fear them, but Lily sat up in bed, restless. She stood by the window, watching the lightning flash behind the trees. I joined her, my paws soft against the wood floor. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then, quietly, "I don't want to leave you." I leaned against her leg. She crouched and wrapped her arms around my neck. But if I do, I need you to remember everything. All of this. Every sound, every word, every piece of sunshine. I nuzzled her shoulder. You're my girl, she whispered. You'll always be my girl. We stood by the window until the storm passed, until the sky grew quiet again. And then we went to bed, side by side, just like always. Summer deepened. The days grew long and golden, the mornings thick with the scent of jasmine and the hum of cicadas. Lily began rising earlier, sometimes before the sun had even crested the horizon. I would hear her quiet steps in the hallway, the gentle click of her mug on the countertop, the kettle's soft whistle as she made tea in the dim, cool stillness. She moved slowly now, but there was intention in every step. She would sit by the window with her blanket around her shoulders, the steam from her cup curling in the air. I joined her each time, curling at her feet, watching the light creep across the floor as the sun woke up the garden. Lily liked to talk in the mornings. They say you can measure a life in love, she murmured one day, stirring honey into her tea. If that's true, Penny, then I've lived 100 lifetimes. I rested my chin on her foot, and she reached down, fingertips brushing my ears. I wonder if you ever think about that cage, she said after a while, her voice barely above a whisper. I wonder if it's a part of you still. I didn't. Not anymore. Not when the light moved across her face just like this. Not when her voice was the first thing I heard each morning. We spent more time outside as the sun warmed everything. Lily moved a chair out to the garden and often sat there while I explored nearby. She planted zinnias and cosmos this year, bright, bold things that made her smile. She hummed more. She even began painting again. She set up a small easel on the patio and painted in slow, careful strokes, sometimes flowers, sometimes the trees. Once she painted me lying in the grass, my head tilted up at the sky. It's not perfect, she said, wiping her hands on a cloth. But you never needed perfect, just real. In the evenings, she invited me onto the couch with her more often. Her hands moved slowly now when she pet me, lingering with each touch. I learned her rhythm like a heartbeat. One night she turned to me and said, "Do you know what I've been thinking about?" I lifted my head. About how when I was a girl, I used to imagine growing up into someone strong and wild, like a sea captain or a mountain guide. But I think the real adventure was this, right here, this porch, this garden, you. I reached out a paw and laid it gently on her lap. She held it. You make everything matter, she whispered. Thomas came over more often now. He brought groceries, helped trim the hedges, changed the light bulbs in the hallway. He always greeted me with a smile and a scratch behind the ears. You're still the boss of the house, huh? He joked. I stayed by Lily's side when he worked around the house. She and Thomas talked quietly in the kitchen sometimes. I could hear the weight in their voices, but they never raised them. There was love between them, old and sure. She gave him another stack of letters one day. These are for later, she said. He nodded and placed them gently into a box. I followed her back to the garden afterward, and she sat beside me in the grass. I don't want to leave anything unsaid, she told me. Words matter. They stay behind like footprints. She picked up one of the letters and read it aloud. To my sweet neighbor Ellie, thank you for the sunflowers, for asking how I am, for waving every morning, even when I was too tired to wave back. You reminded me that kindness doesn't ask for anything in return. She looked at me. Isn't that something? I nuzzled her hand, and she smiled. We began going through old things in the attic. Lily carried down boxes one at a time, sorting through them on the floor of the sunroom. There were books from college, faded recipe cards, small trinkets wrapped in newspaper. She found a small tin full of buttons and marbles. I used to think these were treasure, she said, rolling a blue marble in her palm. I buried them in the backyard once like a pirate hoard. My dad made me draw a map so I could find them again. She laughed, quiet and genuine. I sniffed the tin. The marbles were smooth and cold. I liked the way the light shone through the blue one. Maybe we should bury one, she said. Something to find again someday. She wrapped the marble in a cloth and placed it in a small box. Together we went to the back corner of the garden and dug a little hole. She placed the box inside and covered it with soil. There, she said, brushing her hands. A little piece of us tucked away. The next morning I noticed her breathing was slower, heavier. She leaned against the counter for a long time before sitting down. I'm okay, she said, smiling. Just need a moment. We stayed on the couch all afternoon. She let her head rest on my back as she dozed. I didn't move. The light from the window wrapped around us like a blanket. When she woke, she looked at me for a long time. I hope I've given you a good life, she said. I hope I didn't waste a single day of it. I nudged her arm. Because every day with you, she whispered, has meant everything to me. The stars came out early that night. She opened the window and let the cool air drift in. We listened to the crickets. A breeze moved the curtains gently. This is my favorite sound, she said. The world, when it's quiet. I laid my head in her lap, and she rested her hand on my back. In the early morning, before the sun rose, she sat on the edge of the bed and reached for her slippers. Come on, she whispered. Let's go outside. The grass was wet with dew. The air smelled like earth and sky. We walked slowly to the garden, the birds just beginning to stir. She sat on the bench under the oak tree. I dreamed of a house like this once, she said, before I ever had it, before I even knew what peace felt like. She looked down at me. You made it real. I curled up at her feet, the earth warm beneath me, the morning quiet and full of light. She closed her eyes and tilted her face to the sky. We stayed there for a long time, just listening, just being. The morning Lily didn't get out of bed. The house was silent. Not the kind of silence that held peace, but the kind that waited, holding its breath. I had heard her stir in the night, soft murmurs and shifting blankets, the whisper of wind brushing against the windows. But as the sun rose and light spilled across the floor, she remained still. I sat at the edge of the bed, watching. The light crept across her face, pale and unmoving. Her lips parted slightly. Her hand rested beside her, fingers relaxed. I nudged it gently. Then again. She didn't stir. I whined once, then twice. She had never slept past dawn. I waited, nose against her hand, my tail motionless. The quiet stretched. Eventually, I climbed onto the bed and lay beside her, resting my head against her chest. I waited for the rise and fall. I waited for the heartbeat. I waited for the whisper of breath. It didn't come. I stayed like that until the house changed, until the sounds of footsteps echoed in the hallway. Thomas, his voice calling, soft but alert. Lily? He reached the door, paused when he saw us. His breath caught. He stepped closer, knelt, laid a hand gently on her shoulder. "Oh," he whispered. He didn't cry right away, just closed his eyes, bowed his head. I looked up at him, and he placed a hand on my neck, holding it there for a long time. The next hours passed in a blur. More footsteps, quiet voices, gentle hands. Thomas stayed close. He helped me to the living room, where he placed my bed near the window. I didn't lie down. I paced, then sat, then paced again. The house felt different, like it had exhaled and forgotten how to breathe in again. That evening, Thomas sat with me on the porch. The sky was pink and orange, the garden still. "She loved this place, Fern," he said. "Every inch of it, every leaf, every morning with you." I looked at the garden. The zinnias were still blooming. The breeze carried their scent toward us. "You kept her going," he said, "longer than any doctor expected. She said that to me once, that you gave her more time than medicine ever could." He rubbed his eyes and let out a breath. "She prepared everything, you know. She thought of it all. The letters, the documents, even instructions for your food. That was Lily. She never left anything undone." The wind moved gently through the trees. "She left something else," he said. "For you." He stood and disappeared into the house. When he returned, he carried a small box. He set it on the porch beside me. I sniffed it. It smelled like cedar, and underneath, like her. Thomas opened it slowly. Inside was a folded letter and a new collar. The collar was soft, navy blue, with a silver tag. He picked it up and turned it over. Engraved in delicate letters, "Penny, always loved, always home." He read the letter aloud. "My sweet girl, if you're hearing this, then I've moved on. But don't be afraid. I didn't leave you. Not really. I've left you my voice, my scent in every blanket, my touch in every garden breeze. You were my light, my companion, my reminder that even in silence there can be love. I need you to keep going. Let Thomas help you. Let the world show you its kindness again. Chase the wind, roll in the grass, bark when the mailman comes. Live. And when you smell the lavender in the summer, that's me. I'll be right there, smiling, saying, 'Good girl. Love, Lily.'" Thomas folded the letter and set it gently back in the box. He held the collar for a moment, then fastened it gently around my neck. "She wanted you to wear it," he said, "so you always remember where you belong." I sat still as he adjusted the clasp. The tag rested against my chest, cool and comforting. That night, I wandered the house, stopping in each room. Her chair, her scarf on the hook, the book she left half-read on the windowsill. I lay on her bed and pressed my face into her pillow. I didn't sleep much, but in the morning I woke when the light touched the curtains. I rose. I walked to the kitchen. Thomas was already there, pouring coffee, his movements slow, tired. "Hey, Penny," he said softly. "Hungry?" I wagged once. He filled my bowl, then sat at the table with his mug. "We'll figure it out," he said, "together." In the weeks that followed, things changed, but gently. Thomas came each day. He watered the plants. He read in the garden. He talked to me. Sometimes he played Lily's music, and we sat on the porch and watched the wind move through the flowers. He didn't rush me. Some days, I stayed curled in her armchair, unmoving. Other days, I wandered the backyard, sniffing for traces of her. Her scent lingered in the soil, in the sheets, in the quiet. One afternoon, a letter arrived addressed to Thomas. He read it at the kitchen table, then looked at me. "It's from the shelter," he said. "They're asking if we'd be open to fostering. Just one dog, a quiet one, no pressure." He studied my face. "What do you think?" I stood, walked over, and placed my paw on his knee. The next week, a little brown spaniel arrived. Her name was Millie. She was nervous, her tail tucked, her eyes darting. She reminded me of myself. I stayed close but gave her space. I let her sniff my blanket. I let her eat first. I let her curl beside me in the sunroom. Thomas watched us from the doorway. "Lily would be proud," he said. The garden kept blooming. The house stayed quiet. But it no longer felt empty. It felt watched over, held. Sometimes, when the breeze carried the scent of lavender through the windows, I would close my eyes and listen, and I could hear her, not with words, but with presence, with love, always love.